It is my pleasure to present Diana Paxson, who will speak on carrying a torch for liberty.
Since 1886, Lady Liberty has stood sentinel in New York Harbor. But who is she really? We can describe her as a heroic statue in the neoclassical style designed by Frederick Auguste Bartholdi and made of copper sheets riveted to an iron framework created by Gustave Eiffel. Originally dedicated on October 28, 1886, she underwent major restoration before her centennial in 1986, and she should be good for another 100 years. Will our democracy survive as well? When the thousands who sailed into New York Harbor saluted her, what were they seeking? The date on the tablet she carries proclaims the birth of our independence. The words that open the Declaration are simple. Governments exist to secure the basic rights of life, liberty, and an equal opportunity to seek happiness. For 245 years, we have been striving to understand what these words mean. But if we look back over those years, it becomes clear that the overall trend of US history has been to understand, to extend, and to apply those principles. The Statue of Liberty was titled Liberty Enlightening the World, to celebrate the impact the ideas on which this country was founded had on the rest of the world, ideas that are represented by images like Lady Liberty and the American flag. The forces of hate and fear seek to corrupt them. By reclaiming and re-energizing our national symbols, we can appeal to America's soul, and the torch that Lady Liberty holds high will bring not the fire of destruction, but the light of wisdom. Shireen, can you go in and tell them to stop talking in the kitchen? This is not the first time that the fires of discord have scorched the nation. The revolution set patriot against Tory. The election of 1800 pitted the radical Jefferson against the Federalist Adams in a campaign that produced some truly astonishing invective. The Civil War divided North from South and made us question whether a republic based on the principle of equality could endure. The lady stands on the broken chains of slavery. She welcomes those who believe that we mean what we say. The Anglo-Saxon traditions may be the foundation of this nation, but the edifice it supports was built by people from every nation, and it is they who have been required to actually study our history before becoming citizens, and to take the oath in full consciousness of both the privileges and burdens that status involves, who make us strong. Throughout our history, immigration has been both our strength and an excuse for injustice. As we have preached freedom to the world and practiced systemic racism at home. And yet, in 1776, a room full of men who were sweating through a Philadelphia summer dared to affirm that all men are equally deserving of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. For nearly 2.5 centuries, the overall evolution of American culture has been to manifest that. The path has not been smooth. 2 steps forward are followed by at least 1 step back. The Passing of the Great Race, a book written by an American in 1916, became the inspiration for Adolf Hitler's final solution. In 1925, 50,000 Klansmen in full drag marched on Washington. The horrors of Hitler's concentration camps led to a revulsion of feeling against ethnic prejudice. But today, a new generation preaches a return to a mythical Anglo-Saxon racial identity fueled by hate and fear. But when we remember and regret our failures, as Eleanor Roosevelt pointed out, it is essential that we recall the shining promise that is offered to all men everywhere who would be free, the promise that it is still our destiny to fulfill. In a book called The Soul of Freedom, historian John Meacham says that the dominant feature of that soul is a belief in the proposition, as Jefferson put it in the Declaration, that all men are created equal. It is therefore incumbent on us from generation to generation to create a sphere in which we can live freely, and pursue happiness to the best of our abilities. We cannot guarantee equal outcomes, but we must do all we can to ensure equal opportunity. Hence, a love of fair play, a generosity of spirit, of reaping the rewards of hard work, and of faith in the future. For all our failings, and they are legion, there is an abiding idea that an America in which anyone coming from anywhere of any color or creed has free access to what Lincoln called the just and generous and prosperous system, which opens the way for all. How do we awaken that soul in both the radicals who reject the imperfections of the past and the reactionaries who reject our history's achievements? If a picture is worth 1,000 words, a symbol, an image which has been consciously constructed to embody an ideal and energized by generations, is worth a library. The symbols that Americans have created to express our soul belong to all of us, whatever our party or color or creed. And for those who know how to work with them, they are a powerful source of inspiration and energy. The symbols that inspire us express our identity as Americans. They are the basis of what sociologist Robert Bellah identified as our civil religion, a concept first proposed to by Jean-Jacques Rousseau as a way to gain the unifying and inspiring benefits of spiritual belief without the hazards of organized religion. In a secular nation, the civil religion can be practiced by adherents of all religions or none. Although, as we have seen in cases such as that of Nazi Germany, in an authoritarian state, it can become toxic as well. Current concerns over the naming of sports teams demonstrate both the roles symbols play in relation to community solidarity and the importance of understanding their implications. Bellah viewed the central tradition of the American civil religion not as a form of national self-worship, but as the subordination of the nation to ethical principles that frame and transcend it in terms of which it should be judged. Like the symbols of traditional religions, the icons of a civil religion can be corrupted to become tools of hate and fear. I believe that true patriotism includes the responsibility to understand and preserve the principles upon which this nation was founded, and to encourage evolution towards the betterment of the nation and humankind. To quote Bellah once more, although matters of personal religious belief, worship, and association are considered to be strictly private affairs, there are, at the same time, certain common elements of religious orientation that the great majority of Americans share. These have played a crucial role in the development of American institutions and still provide a religious dimension for the whole fabric of American life, including the political sphere. This public religious dimension is expressed as a set of beliefs, symbols, and rituals that I'm calling American civil religion. The inauguration of a president is an important ceremonial event in this religion. It reaffirms, among other things, the religious legitimation of the highest political authority. The writings of the founding fathers are theists in that they assume the existence of a creative force which is active and benevolent, but do not identify it with any specific religion. Referred to as providence, heaven, or nature's God, it appears with a bare minimum of personification, like the Force in the Star Wars universe. However, most people find it hard to relate to an abstraction. Inevitably, spirit gets broken down into aspects that are given a face and form. In the United States, we have figures such as Lady Liberty in Columbia, a succession of heroes from George Washington to Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and the flag. Adherence to this civil religion is formalized by taking the Pledge of Allegiance to make the basic principles that are derived from the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, and have been well developed and elaborated by leaders and reformers ever since. If our foundational documents are its scriptures, the rituals of this religion are the customs that have grown up around our national holidays and formal ceremonies like the inauguration, in which our leaders conduct the business of the government. Though the English language shapes the way we think about government, we owe the compulsion to represent concepts and images to the classical tradition. An idea in someone's head is personified and given physical form in an image. That image, shared and publicized, becomes a symbol, taking on additional meanings from the contexts in which it appears, which in turn affect the way in which it is interpreted. Most of the time, Americans enjoy the trappings of our civil religion without giving them much thought. But in wartime, figures like Lady Liberty in Columbia have both been involved with considerable success to raise both funds and morale. Uncle Sam wants you. Smokey the Bear says stop forest fires. Images are the language of the unconscious. Politicians can use them in any context to sway voters. The business of advertising is based on using them to make a sale. Used often and with intent, images can achieve what amounts to an independent reality. For many of us, images, songs, symbols, even buildings can focus awareness and speak to us, and speak to the imagination. In January of this year, the United States Capitol became the scene of one of the most appalling events in our history, the insurrection, and cleansed of the stains of violence. It also became the triumphant scene of the legally elected president's inauguration. The number of times the building was referred to as sacred space in news coverage demonstrates the instinctive reverence it inspires. Like the symbols of traditional religion, the icons of a civil religion can be corrupted to become tools of hate and fear. I believe that true patriotism includes the responsibility to understand and preserve the principles upon which the nation was founded, and to encourage evolution towards the betterment of the nation and humankind. Human cultures need symbols, and the more people who are inspired by an image, the more powerful it becomes. The reservoir of energy in the symbols created by earlier Americans is a resource that we should not waste. Rather than throwing it out, the symbols of the past, we need to update their interpretation. If many minds start imaging a more positive understanding of their meaning, we can restore the national soul. What are these American symbols? The flag, the heroes, allegorical figures like Lady Liberty, historical sites, and the holidays. The flag is the most problematic, but it offers the greatest opportunity. Taking the knee at a sports event is a reminder that our deeds are not living up to the meaning of the pledge. The pledge is an oath, liberty and justice for all. As an affirmation, spoken subliminally if necessary, every time you see a flag. It could have a major impact because, of course, we see flags everywhere. I have made up business cards with a picture of the flag on one side and liberty and justice all above it, and on the back, the Pledge of Allegiance in its original form, which did not say under God. Pagans usually say under gods, or some under the goddess. Some people delete it entirely. We take these cards with us when we go to rallies and we hand them out in hopes of perhaps persuading some of the people who tend to look at us and say, don't carry that flag, burn it. It is a major symbol and it is a major goal to reclaim it. Then we have the heroes. The fact that the resounding success of the Marvel universe and its superheroes is proof, I think, that we need heroes. We want them. It's been interesting to watch in the Marvel universe that the superheroes are not completely confident. And there's a lot of soul searching among many of them to understand what it means to be a hero and what the hero's relationship to the people that they're trying to protect should be. So we have heroes, starting with the founding fathers, and the instinct to deify has been apparent from the beginning. Washington was hailed as a demigod in poetic terms, but I think people really felt that way. And as evidence, if you've seen the Capitol Rotunda, it shows Washington being carried up to heaven, surrounded by Roman gods representing the different areas of American life. After the Civil War, pictures appeared in many newspapers, several versions of the picture showing Washington taking Lincoln up to heaven, and the pictures are titled The Apotheosis of Lincoln. Heroes are also, as we have been seeing in the news quite frequently, can be problematic. Because they were human beings, none of them were perfect. And I look at the Romans who, when they burned incense to the emperor, were not burning it to the mortal man, they were burning it to his higher self, his genius, in hopes that his genius would inspire him to do a better job. I have to admit, I was never quite able to bring myself to burn incense in front of a picture of the former president, but the principle holds. And the heroes give us hope that with all our imperfection, we too can achieve great things. There are historical sites and they hold energy. If you tour Valley Forge and think about what it was like to suffer through a winter there with not enough to eat or wear or burn for fuel, it makes you think about things differently. And they hold our memories, and the Capitol building is, everybody knows that it's where the two houses of Congress meet. And we know where the west side of it is where the inauguration takes place. And that's, of course, the side that was attacked. But on the other side, which is where most people enter, is what they call the Hall of Statue, where every state has been invited to insert two statues representing their history or ideals. There are also plaques to the slaves who built the place, and a plaque to the Union soldiers who slept there defending it during the Civil War. There's one wonderful photo in the news where members of the National Guard were sleeping at the foot of that plaque. Then we have the national holidays. This is an area that needs a lot of work. If you watch the television, you would assume the purpose of our federal holidays is to sell cars and mattresses. If you think about their meaning, it is actually possible to turn one of these holidays into something with some spiritual purpose and an opportunity to use some spiritual energy. The cycle of holidays begins with Independence Day, when the freedom was stated, liberty, the principles of liberty were stated. The most recent holiday to be added to the cycle is Juneteenth. And they bracket the year, the date on which it all got started, and the date on which that principle of liberty was affirmed to the last group of slaves who had not heard about it. For a principle on how to work with these holidays, I always start with decoration, with contemplation of the meaning of the holiday, with some kind of celebration. But the most important thing about the holidays is don't just take them as an opportunity to get a fire up the barbecue. Think about what each holiday means and then activate, do something. In Juneteenth, like Martin Luther King Day, that is an opportunity to support the civil rights group of your choice. And finally, we have the figures. The classical tradition of personifying and allegorizing was incorporated into the decoration of public buildings all over America. In California, for instance, we have in San Francisco a statue of Minerva, and who also appears on the California state seal. She represents achievement in technology and commerce, because she's sitting on the seal. She's overlooking San Francisco Bay, full of ships bringing in trade. Columbia, whose statue tops the Capitol building, is the Lady of the Land. She was originally a allegorical figure to represent all of North America, but she became the geographical spirit. So she stands guard over the Capitol, and we keep focusing on her in hopes that she will inspire the people who are sitting below her to make good laws. Minerva is the wisdom of the old world. Our Lady of Guadalupe is another important figure who, in the church records, has claimed to be the patroness of North America, and she certainly is the guardian of the native peoples and a representative of liberty in the Mexican fight for independence, whose slogan was "Down with Bad Government." So in those ladies, as in other figures like Uncle Sam or Johnny Appleseed, We have figures that fire the imagination. So, thoughts matter. Positive thinking may not shift the course of a hurricane, but when many minds hold the same vision, they can change the way people react to the threat. And humans think in images and in words. An ancient tradition holds that the symbol is nothing, the reality is all. Symbols shape our perceptions of that reality. It has been said that evil can only conquer when good people do nothing. If we don't like the way things are going, we need to organize, protest, and vote. We need to use the power of our minds and spirits to shape perception. The symbols that express our American identity are a priceless resource. Whether we follow an old religion, a new one, or none, working together, we can use those symbols to reclaim and energize the ideals that express our nation's soul. As Kamala Harris said in her first campaign, the fight to restore the soul of our nation, the values we cherish, and the truths we hold will be won or lost by all of us. Today, the Unitarian Universalist sacred flame links us to the torch of Lady Liberty. The unconscious, symbolic language tells us that whether we consider her a goddess or an allegory or just an inspiration, as a symbol, she helps us to focus and send forth the power of our spirits. Some of the immigrants, seeing her as they arrived, called her the goddess of America. A god form is a conduit. By honoring, invoking, and working with this image, we create a way for the energies she represents to energize our spirits and influence our collective soul. We can say that we want truth and justice, but visualizing someone bringing it raises a lot more energy. The torch shines day and night. Today, we work with Lady Liberty as bearer of the light that dispels clouds of despair, ignorance, bigotry, hate, and replaces them with wisdom, hope, clarity, and compassion.